The Martian by Andy Weir, 50 Shades of Grey by E.L. James, The Celestine Prophecy by James Redfield, Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur. All these works of literature are now quite well known, some on the border of being cultural phenomena. Despite their disparate subject matter, all four of these works intersect at a meaningful point. They were all initially self-published. These, along with a plethora of other success stories, serve as inspiration for a multitude of aspiring authors who have chosen to self-publish their work. Our podcast, Homespun Script, is dedicated to telling their stories, talking with them about their work, and listening to their experiences as self-published authors. The goal is simple: provide indie and self-published authors with a platform to promote themselves and their work. While providing this space hopefully does help, we encourage all our listeners to further support these authors by writing positive and engaging reviews of their work on a platform we all know of but will remain nameless. Doing so is a simple, easy, and direct way of supporting them. And now, on to our guest. Hello, and welcome to the podcast Homespun Script. My guest today is Robert John Jenson, author of the zombie apocalypse thriller The October Light of August. He is currently working on a collection of short stories in the genre of urban fantasy. Today, we will be discussing his science fiction novel, All the Stars That Ever Were, which was published in 2018. So, Robert, do you prefer Robert or Bob?
Bob's fine.
Bob's good? Okay.
Yep.
First off, thank you so much for joining me today. It's a pleasure and privilege to talk with you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Sure. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm old enough to have watched Star Trek, the original series, when it first ran.
Okay, that's a badge of honor.
So I probably didn't understand it much at the time, but, I really didn't get into, I'm happily married. I have two wonderful daughters that live in Chicago. One's a welder, one's a plumber. I probably really didn't get into hard sci-fi till probably the late 70s. I probably read more fluff, you might say. I just think my literary sights were set a little higher when I had a science fiction, fantasy, and literature class in a junior college. And it was by a guy by the name of Homer Lusk, who's probably one of the more brilliant people I'd ever met. Yeah. And I think that kind of upped my game a little bit. I started thinking about writing about that time. I think Stephen King was probably a pretty big influence on me. As far as characterization, things like that, and what I wanted to write, my first novel was going to be a high fantasy kind of, and I thought it needs to be kind of a grim and gritty. There's not enough grim and gritty high fantasy out there. And that never happened, and I've kind of cannibalized some stuff here and there. But yeah, I live in the inland Northwest in Spokane, Washington, eastern end of the state. And I'm kind of in between the boomers and Gen Xers. I'm not quite sure what I am, but I call myself Generation Zep, I guess. So,
okay, that works.
Yeah, just kind of an old cis white guy.
Okay, well, I'm with you there. I think you might have a couple years on me, but not many. So let's talk a bit about your novel, All the Stars That Ever Were, which I would absolutely classify as science fiction. I don't know if I would call it hard sci-fi or soft sci-fi. I don't know if I really understand the distinction between the two to a full extent. But by the way, love the title, and specifically with reference to how things play out in the novel. So tell me, how did the novel come to be?
Well, it started out, we were driving home with my wife in the car. My wife is legally blind, and she certainly, that's a condition that the three sisters share in the book. And she has two other sisters. So you can see where this has got the inspiration from. But she gasped, and of course I'm thinking of kids running out in front, or a cat or dog or something. She thought she saw a TARDIS in the neighbor's yard. It was a blue and white air mattress up on end. corded to the stop sign, but it looked like a TARDIS to her. And I wouldn't be a very good husband if I didn't go home and post on Facebook. My cute wife thought she saw a TARDIS. My brother-in-law, Matt, said, yeah, Ryan women see things that just aren't there. And I responded, there's got to be a story in that the blind Ryan women save the universe. And it kind of went from there. Originally, I was thinking more of they're older, 50s, 60s age, and maybe a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy vibe to it. And then it just changed from there when I started writing it. So I decided younger characters might be a little more sellable, but I just kind of wanted to see some growth there. Starting out when they were really young and then jumping ahead about 20 some years. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So is there, there's a link between, or some kind of thematic link between your first book on the zombie apocalypse, or a zombie apocalypse thriller, and this one? Was there how did you make the transition was made by this experience?
The zombie apocalypse one was kind of written first as an exercise. I was annoyed at a book I read that I thought was so bad that I could do better than that. So
it's a frequent story, actually. Yeah.
And so it started out as an exercise and turned into a short novel. Basically, it started out in third person, then I switched it to more like a journal entry. Right about the time I was working on that, my daughter's apartment caught fire down in Eugene, Oregon, and everything was fine. But they lost just about everything. So I kind of put my daughters in the book as by proxy with two other characters. If they wanted to sue me for character appropriation or whatever, they could get away with it. But it was a way of me making sure they were going to be okay, because they survive a zombie apocalypse, and they end up being pretty badass, and they are pretty tough cookies.
Yeah, well, they're definitely tough cookies in all the stars that ever were.
Yeah, I like strong female characters, So there's a link between that, you could say the two sisters in the October Light of August probably helped pave the way to the three sisters in All the Stars That Ever Were. They are loosely based on my wife and her sisters. Personality wise, though, there's probably a little bit of my wife and Cheryl, probably, but there's also my daughters mixed in there too. So they're not carbon copies of my wife and her sisters by any means, except other than sharing blonde hair, blue eyes, and a vision problem.
Okay. The vision problem. Yeah, that makes sense.
That's something I was able to utilize and pick up, and mannerisms or something like the head shaking, because their eyes are constantly kind of darting back and forth. So when they're reading something, their head's kind of moving. And I've noticed it in her older brother. She's got a younger brother, again, Catholic, 7 brothers and sisters. So,
yeah.
But she's got some darker haired brothers that really don't have that problem. So it's just interesting how genetics play out,
So your background in science fiction, I mean, you say that you watched the original Star Trek. You're obviously well-versed in the universe of Doctor Who, something I can't quite say for myself. But what other background in science fiction have you had?
Well, I saw the original Planet of the Apes at a drive-in when I first read. Like I said, I think the book that really I thought, I like this, was Ringworld by Larry Niven.
Oh yeah, sure.
That really, I think, led me into better science fiction. When I meant by soft or fluff, a lot of it was movie novelizations of a movie, or that sort of thing. I read a lot of Doc Savage. He was a prototype for probably superheroes we have today. Marvel and DC owe a lot to them. But I wouldn't say there was anything that was great lit that I was reading up until I got into college. I remember seeing 2001 when I didn't know what the hell it meant. I was probably about 11 or so, and of course, you were amazed with the effects, especially. Sure. I think I saw it second run, but I didn't know what was going on, and over the years, I just thought it was boring.
Oh, the ending confused me for years. Yeah,
PBS was going to play it, and I thought, okay, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to watch this thing and figure out what was going on. And it was like a little miniature bomb went off in my head when I watched it, because at the time I could appreciate the cinematography more, all the shots that he had lined up, and I was able to appreciate the pace. And I can easily say it's in my top 3 favorite movies of all time. That led me into reading Arthur C. Clarke, which I think he's a fantastic writer, maybe a little light on the characterization, but concept-wise, I think it's hard to beat him. You know? And he could end a book beautifully or a story beautifully, make you think. And then that led me into other things like Larry Niven. And the first author I ever met was Greg Bear. I don't know if you've read anything by him.
I haven't.
He was actually instrumental back when he was a teenager of getting the San Diego Comic-Con going. I would call him a literature-based science fiction writer. So that was kind of cool. That's the first book I'd ever had. It was what his first novel was assigned to us in the science fiction fantasy literature course I took in college. And it just kind of steamrolled from there. You can kind of say thank 2001 for it and Arthur C. Clarke, and then branching out from there. I think I'd read Lucifer's Hammer by Larry Niven and Jerry Brunel about a comet smashing into Earth and bringing us back to pre-industrial times. But Ringworld really, I think, opened up my eyes to the breadth of alien thought, different aliens, and they're not just humanoids with bumps on their foreheads or something.
Right. They
could be any shape, size, and
let's definitely put a pin in that one. I want to address it later, and specifically how you approach writing about it. But I can definitely sense some Arthur C. Clarke vibes in All the Stars That Ever Were, specifically Childhood's End. And it's like, for hard science fiction, you don't get a whole lot of, there's some laser guns and some fighting and things like that. But what really struck me are the heady and deep philosophical themes that you deal with and address in the book. And the first one, the one that's kind of right out in the front of everything, is this idea of a multiverse.
Okay.
And I will fully admit that I am not well versed in the physics behind the theory of a multiverse or quantum mechanics. Okay. All right. I wasn't quite sure, because you write about it as though, oh boy, am I going to be dealing with a physicist here? Or
hardly.
Okay. Okay, well, I'm going to speak a little bit more freely then. I don't feel quite as self-conscious.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about this idea of the multiverse that you have and how you came with it, and what gave rise to it.
I think I've always been fascinated of the what-if notion, and I'd had an idea of a woman walking down the street where her perspective kept changing. She was a street person, poor, an addict, and then morphing into this Madison Avenue rich person type thing, and constantly shifting. I didn't think I didn't quite know why I kept visiting, or why I kept thinking of that, but the idea of a multiverse, and where would we be now with just different, choices if we'd made other choices in our life differently, And, there's theories of, which, again, I don't buy that every time you make a decision, things branch out and there's this universe and that. That seems just a little too wishful thinking and cumbersome for the universe to be. It just seems a bit much.
It always seemed a bit hand wavy to me.
Yeah. And I guess I see it more as a story device. I don't have a firm belief that there is a multiverse. I don't know.
Mhm.
Same thing like with zombies. I
Right.
think the idea of a dead body coming up to eat us isn't likely.
Yeah,
You
it's
can still make a good
not
story
scientifically
out of it.
viable.
You
Sure.
know,
Mhm.
but I guess the idea of regrets and what might be or what will be is always intrigued me.
Mhm.
And um, yeah, that's pretty much the crux of it.
Mhm.
Why I used that as I had the idea of the woman kind of morphing, and so I just kind of utilized that when they would jump universes.
Okay, yeah, and it's amplified. Something fierce here because
Yes,
it's not just one person changing; it's just multiple different realities beginning, I guess, kind of at the same time, but becoming temporally out of sync.
right.
Okay,
Yep.
so did you? I sort of saw a link between the multiverse and time travel. Is this something that you can explain more, or am I reading into the text a little bit too
Well,
much?
in a way, but only time traveling because I mentioned that the universe is there's an oldest one and a youngest one, and
Mhm.
there's a finite amount, and so you can think of it as a way of time traveling by going into a universe that's younger. So
Mhm.
it's. And I think I made mention that they could only go back like maybe 3 million years or something because they're
Yeah,
that
that's it.
far. Something, I
Mhm.
everybody does dinosaurs. I'm more interested
Yeah.
in early man and
Mhm.
the God. I wrote it down in a short story. I kind of have a sequel in my short story where the sisters deal with the bomber. So
Mhm.
um, my mind's blanking. Old man memory here.
Oh, hey.
Just about 10,000 years ago, put it this way, in the
Okay.
Great Basin.
Mhm.
So yeah, I figured I needed to have a cutoff point, and I thought it would give me plenty of room to play with later, but I didn't want them to have to go too far back and mess with dinosaurs or anything. So it's
Yeah.
time travel in the sense that they're just going to a younger universe that, you know, hasn't caught up to the current era of ours.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm. Yeah. I think dinosaurs would make it a little bit too pulpy. I'm not sure it would have added a whole lot to the story anyway.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's
So,
quite a bit going on as it is. So another philosophical idea that I don't I want to say wrestle with. I'm not sure that's the right word though, and maybe this is a bit more indirect. But the issue of language and communication with non-humans and in this case aliens. How did you approach this? Because that seems like something extremely difficult to do.
well, I guess I probably cheated a little bit with a massive entity like Jack. Uh,
Hmm.
that they would be able to figure out how to communicate with us. So that to
Hmm.
me was pretty easy. They were so all powerful that they could know us in an instant. And so
Hmm.
I guess that's probably a little bit cheating. But as far as say something along with the gas giants, I think I think it was Carl Sagan talked about how they might communicate with aliens, and they'd start with math, I believe.
Hmm.
Establish a yes or no or this is a
Hmm.
true statement. 1+1=2. That means
Hmm.
true. So I guess I didn't really get into it so much, like how they communicate with the gas giants.
Hmm.
Other than what physical characteristics might be. They can tell if
Hmm.
they're alarmed or whatever. And of
Hmm.
course, with the Rippers, they weren't going to be able to deal with them much at all.
Yeah.
And I know you know they end up evolving too. And,
Hmm.
so I wasn't too worried about, I didn't want to get into the nuts and bolts of it, I guess. I know
Hmm.
there's plans to try to, how to communicate with an alien intelligence, but also I wonder at some point, would it be impossible? I think Stanislaw Lem, who wrote Solaris,
Oh yeah. Hmm.
he had a book called His Master's Voice, I think it was called, where
Hmm.
the premise was they couldn't figure each other out.
Hmm.
Either they got a message or something, and it's kind of where I think Carl Sagan got his idea for his book Contact.
Hmm.
The movie was made from that.
Hmm.
Uh, he kind of got his idea from his master's voice, I think.
Oh, okay.
Only there were two different endings. I think they were
Okay.
still utterly perplexed at the end of Lem's book.
Mhm.
And, of course, it was a little more beneficial in Contact. So,
Mhm. Yeah, I have read Solaris, and there are similar themes there where they're trying to communicate with the ocean,
right,
and it turns out that the ocean just thinks in such a completely different way that
right,
communication is essentially impossible. But it's interesting that you say we'd start with a yes or no with math, and that actually sort of that binary opposition of yes or no, but just two different alternatives, does permeate throughout the novel at all levels of existence for not only the I guess higher order aliens, but there's existence and non-existence, because even the
right,
higher order aliens are terrified
right.
of this I don't know if I even want to call it a non-existent entity, but of this I was about to say presence
Yeah,
of non-existence, which again is a little bit strange to
yeah.
say.
It can get you kind of. Yeah, I think we tend to want to anthropomorphize things, even
Hmm.
nothing at all.
Yeah.
You know, and I am currently still wrestling with that in some characters in my
Hmm.
urban fantasy. So um, there's links to all the stars in that will be
Hmm.
apparent.
Oh,
So
cool. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, it's I don't the idea of nothing at all, like not even empty space time. We're just talking nothing.
Right.
Is always gave me a sinking feeling in my gut. I can't
Hmm.
explain it, you know.
Hmm.
Um, and so I thought, well, that would have to be something that could essentially nullify existence itself.
Hmm.
Even a massive entity alien that is almost godlike, as can't stand against it. That's got to be
Hmm.
terrifying to them as well.
But still, we are constrained, and even if we're trying to write about or talk, and this is why it interests me so much when people write about different methods of communication that are almost categorically or should be non-anthropocentric, because we are still
Right,
constrained by anthropocentric language from our own perspective and the way we perceive space and time in this linear way. And that's why I really appreciated maybe I think the last third of the book, where things are jumping all over the place. And it's almost hard to keep track of what's going on. It's almost jarring. And I don't want to say confusing, but it's interesting in a really engaging way, because I wanted to read it again to try and figure out what was going
cool.
on. Yeah. And so that I sort of took that as your way of presenting this completely different way of thinking that we don't ordinarily think of, or a space in which we don't ordinarily think, I think might
Right.
be the way of putting it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things, like you say, especially with aliens. I mean, chances are they're not going to think like us.
Mhm.
Is it possible to experience existence all at once, from the Big
Right.
Bang to it, whatever ends up being the final, you know, if it's
Hmm.
art, like, or there's a big crunch, who knows? Is I explore this again, my urban fantasy stories. My main character perceives everything as now.
Hmm. Oh,
So,
okay.
everything is now to him. So he has to use time references just to be able to understood to other
Hmm.
people at some point, to us mere mortals. But yeah, it's because my philosophy, I guess, is there's really no past or future. There's only now, right now, and
Hmm.
it's only entropy. You know,
Hmm.
but we have to think in terms of time. You know, we wouldn't be able to get through our day without it. So
We're sort of hardwired there. Hmm.
exactly,
Hmm.
time may not be a physical thing, but it's real enough,
Yeah.
for us to be able to utilize the concept, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. It's a
Yeah,
perceptual and cognitive limitation.
sure.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a big difference between writing about an entity like Jack, who is cognitively far beyond what we can think of in terms. I don't even think Jack thinks in terms of space and time. He's sort of beyond that.
Yeah,
And then the gas giants, who are within space and time, but they're just physically so different.
Right.
that the world or reality is perceived in a completely different way by them.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if they have the concept of time, they probably just don't care.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
They're existing. Their life is a little more sedate, other than fending off rippers and
Mm-hmm.
and eating Bradberries.
Oh, I love that reference. Yeah, Bradberries.
I had to have some Martian literature references
Yeah,
there.
I caught the feeling that you had a lot of fun importing or
Yep.
including a lot of Easter eggs like that.
Yep. Burroughs. That where JC got her name. She
Mm-hmm.
misinterpreted it from her brother calling her the initials JC for John Carter.
Mm-hmm.
She took it as a single name, and
Uh-huh.
I like leaving things for readers to kind of discover. And I don't think you have to spell out everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I had a friend you didn't tell me how so and so went missing. Well, it's in there. If you pay attention to it, it's kind of hinted at. So
yeah, I think I missed that one, and after we're done recording, I'm going to ask you.
Okay. Yeah, it's like I said, the same thing with references to Three Sisters. Orion's Belt is also known as the Three Sisters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and then there's a few other things sprinkled in there that I don't spell out right. Like there's the falls that she has a memory of jumping into. Mm-hmm. They're known as the Three Sisters, but I'm not spelling it out, but it's an actual place in Ramona. So
yeah. And they all forgot a towel. They didn't bring a towel with them.
Didn't bring the towel. Well, Carol can be excused for that, but the other two will know better, right?
Yeah.
Oh, and I think I referenced my daughters just loved a murder podcast that two women do about, they talk about, I just call it the murder podcast, but I referenced their names in there. That was kind of, but apparently, I think women need to know these things,
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
And Carol is very capable of holding her own.
Yep. She's not going to take any guff off anybody.
Yep. After reading the book, I'm glad my name was Nate and not Mike. Put it that way.
I was going to think the guy at the pool, was he Nate?
One of them was, yeah.
Yeah, he was just the putz at the pool there, but yeah. Mike got what was coming to him. So
he sure did, yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to think he wised up, but
yeah,
maybe went on the straight and narrow after that,
Yeah.
But chances are probably not, probably doubled down.
So going back to a couple of points you made, first off, writing a novel or presenting a reality where the aliens aren't just human beings with bumps, which we see so often.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I like that with the gas giants, and I liked it with Jack. And it works into the other point you made about not giving the reader everything. Mm-hmm. And I think if you had spelled everything out very clearly, that's not a criticism. I know it might sound like one, but it definitely isn't. Then I don't feel I would be compelled to read the last third of the book again. And I feel greatly compelled to read it multiple times because there are a few passages in there that I think, whoa, okay, there's a lot going on. Like the internal monologue that I think it's Carol has with herself at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah. The internal monologue where she's talking about being a machine or being a programmed machine or part of something much larger and just being a very, very small part of that.
Mm-hmm.
That I had to read a few times just because there's so much going on there and so many different ways to take it. Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
Well, good.
So another philosophical theme running through your novel is this idea that humanity actually occupies a very small space in the universe, or multiverse in this case, not only physically, but existentially, and that we really aren't all that important in the grand scheme of things. And I imagine realizing this at a meaningful level may well incite something of an existential crisis. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on this because I got a couple different intimations of it in the book.
Yeah, I think, honestly, I think people worry too much about how important we are. What's important to me is how I treat people here and now.
Mm-hmm.
How I raised my daughter. My wife and I raised our daughters to be good people. When the sun swells up and swallows the earth, it's nothing else is going to matter at that point. Whether we actually do escape planet Earth and are able to head out and multiply or whatever, I don't think that's a guarantee at all. Especially in the times we're living now, things are getting pretty scary again, I think.
Yeah.
And it's certainly not anything we're owed, as a species. And I don't think any life out there is probably owed that. The universe is indifferent to it.
Right. That's a very interesting way of putting it.
We're a byproduct,
an emergent quality.
And I'd like to think, and it is sad that if we can't rise above our base instincts, it's sad because I think we're capable of greatness. But then we're also still petty, mean, arrogant and self-centered creatures. And so, you don't have, being a science fiction fan, you want to put your characters out there experiencing things. And that'll never go away. And who knows, someday I might have human race out there as a starfaring species that is exploring the galaxy and beyond, And so I don't find that impossible notion at all. But I also think the opposite of being, a starfaring species is also just as valid and could be explored, story-wise. We ain't that important to the universe, So everything that we can see out there is in the past, I think I was just on Threads. They were talking about the oldest galaxy out there. And I was just curious. I wonder what it looks like now, this moment of now. And I asked the woman who had posted about it, did they have any models or theories on how it's evolved? And she said, not yet. We just don't know that much. It's blowing our minds as it is because it's brighter than it's supposed to be or something like that. So, but, what we're staring at up on the night sky is in the past, and as far as we're concerned. And I'm fascinated as to what's out there now. Is there something heading our way we don't know about?
Right. Yeah.
So there's a lot of mystery left out there. But I love seeing. I was blown away by the Hubble shots when they first came. I remember the Viking lander. Well, I watched the moon landing. So
I'm envious, but
watched that. I kid, and then saw. Remember seeing the first images from the Viking lander that blew my little mind, and then Hubble, and now the Webb telescope. It's just absolutely fascinating to me. I may have a pessimistic outlook to humans and their place in the universe, but I bet it is common throughout.
It's interesting that you say pessimistic there, because I sort of saw, I think it was Carol in the book, go through the realization that I saw her go through it in two ways, actually. The realization that we don't really matter in the way we ordinarily think. The first is maybe midway through, where she's going through a rumination, and she says she remembers the moment that she stopped believing in God.
Yes.
And how much of a relief it was.
Yeah.
And then later on, all three of the sisters, when they come to this realization that, we don't really matter in the universe, they just kind of go through their own motions. It affects them insofar as how they understand things, but they don't go through an existential crisis in the sense that, we don't really matter, so why do we bother getting up in the morning? And it almost seemed, at least for Carol, this existential realization seemed just as liberating as it would be intimidating.
Right. Yeah, I think they realize their love for each other and their love of family.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what mattered. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's what really matters right now. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess if anybody's going to be more crushed, would have been Cheryl because of her belief in God and everything. But she seems to. But she also she's not ignorant. She's not scientifically illiterate. You know, she's probably more on the ball on that than Carol is. You know, because Carol's background, she was raised and had a knee-jerk reaction to not like any nerd stuff. Because of her original dad. So, but I don't think I gave them a lot of time to think about it a lot either. Because things accelerated.
Mm-hmm. But they're not just reacting, but they're contemplating everything, and they very quickly come to this realization. Say, okay, well, we might play a very small part in the universe. We might not be the center of the universe, but also within that, we have this very localized sphere of meaning for us, and that doesn't change, even if everything outside that does change.
And they ultimately end up being a very significant need for the universe, And I think even the smallest things can make a difference. Whether it's the butterfly effect, or
that's exactly what came to mind.
Or an infectious disease, it could be a tiny little thing, but it can wreak some havoc,
We've mentioned this kind of throughout our discussion, but a lot of fun little Easter egg references that you have throughout the novel. We've already mentioned Darla says, I think it's Darla, we all should have brought towels when they take off. And nice. I think there's another reference to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I think
probably,
there are probably a few of them I missed too, but I think the phrase life, the universe, and everything came out at one point.
Right. I think I have a lot of pop cultural references from even down to Raising Arizona.
I missed that one. That's one of my favorite movies too.
Yes, I think so. Maybe The Right Stuff. I can't recall off the top of my head. I think Darla's kind of the pop culture quote person, and Carol probably misses most of them. But,
Carol's got other concerns.
Right. And then I think she mixes up Star Wars and Star Trek at one point. So
the It's a Trap reference. It's a trap, right? Isn't that from Star Trek? And one of the most famous Star Wars memes ever.
Oh yeah. So that was a lot of fun. Plus putting like I said, the kind of oblique references to the Three Sisters and things like that. I like dropping things like that in there just for the people that are in the know. I think I don't know if I have a Doc Savage reference in there or not. I did in the zombie book. I do actually have an homage in my urban fantasy series of stories I've been working on, but sometimes I try to put a little nods to Doc Savage here and there.
Yeah, I think I probably would have missed those. I'm not too familiar with Doc Savage, but
understood.
It looks like you're appealing to everybody on that. Yeah, I like the sideways references to Dark Side of the Moon and Pink Floyd as well.
Oh yeah,
yeah, very appropriate. So, what were your favorite parts of the book to write?
Probably just the interactions between the sisters. Really. I did, I enjoyed writing the gas giants and relationship and, how they could kind of bond, at least with Darla. But I think just the back and forth between them, I like things like when Cheryl almost says what happened to our Carol and catches herself because she
Yeah.
knows, that could be a painful thing, even, that it's awkward and things like that. And that kind of just popped up kind of quickly. It just seemed like it flowed right. That's what it would have been a natural question.
Oh, yeah. And a natural way of phrasing it, too. Yeah.
But then again, she's also cognizant of her sister's feelings. Even though Carol tries to seem aloof,
right,
through it all, she's aware her sister's has feelings, and it's been tough on her.
Right. And then there's a question of identity too, because it's still Carol, but you can't really say Carol 1 and Carol 2,
right?
Even if they are physically distinct.
Yeah,
it's a bit of a impersonal, robotic way of doing it.
Exactly. So yeah, those were probably my favorite bits to write. I probably spent more time conceptualizing other things. But as far as writing, I think I like a good back and forth. I like honest interaction between characters. I enjoyed writing the tattooing scene.
That was great. Yeah.
I had to research. I don't, my daughters have tattoos. I don't. So I was going back to them. I read a book by Freddie Negretti. He was a famous tattoo artist, and that's where I got most of the, he was, I think he was Hispanic and Jewish. And so I made my character Hispanic and Norwegian, since I got Norwegian blood in me. So, and of course, I've always loved the Norse mythology, so I thought, well, I'll mix those, but I got a lot of help from that book. And then ask my daughters, well, what did it feel like? Getting a tattoo, So, and they seem to think that passed muster for the scene. So, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that was a great scene. And the dialogue between the sisters was, I thought, very well crafted. Okay. And there's a long history. It's becoming actually a common theme on this podcast, referencing the long history of male authors writing female characters very poorly. Right. And I don't know if I'm the best person to make an assessment of this, but I thought you wrote all three female characters very well.
Well, thank you. I had a strong-willed mother. She was probably a feminist without thinking she was a feminist. She didn't take any guff off anybody, She worked for an OBGYN, so my dad and I got to hear tales around the dinner table. I found out women were just as gross as men,
What a perfect time to tell such stories, right?
It gave me, women are smart, capable, and they can hold their own if they have to. I'm not a big fan of damsels in distress. I think even though I love Edgar Rice Burroughs, it's a little tedious with him having to rescue the love life every book, something like that. Yeah, so I hope they came across as authentic. I haven't. It passed the sniff test with my wife and my daughters, other friends. They seem to think it was okay, but yeah, even you still kind of hold your breath, cross your fingers, and hope you didn't screw up too badly. Yeah,
it was a very far cry. I'm a big fan of Robert Heinlein, but every time I read one of his female characters, I'm like, I don't know if I can read it. It almost ruins the book for me a lot of the time.
Yeah, even Friday was kind of like he has this female, protagonist that is it's been years since I've read it, but yeah, you kind of grimace,
Yeah, Friday left a bad mark on me. I think I read the first chapter when I was maybe 12 years old. And if you remember, that first chapter is pretty intense. Yeah. And I think, what the heck is this? And I just put it down. And I'm like, I'm not reading Heinlein anymore.
You go back, problematic to Lovecraft, and like I said, even Burroughs with I call it casual racism. I don't think the man was a racist, but I think he was ignorant, But I do think he liked other cultures, different cultures. He was fascinated with them, But yeah, it can be very tough to read, especially Tarzan of the Apes. Some things, he's great at action. It was a very bittersweet ending, what I liked, but man, the nanny character was really, really makes you grimace, you
Yeah,
know.
it's very
Oh
cringy
yeah,
these days.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah.
you know, like I say, there's Lovecraft. There's Lovecraft, who was an active racist, I guess,
Oh yeah.
and then there was just ignorance. Even the Doc Savage's book, when you read it, you'll come across something and it'll make you cringe.
Hmm.
You know, even though he did have some
Yeah.
good, strong. His cousin Patricia was pretty tough cookie, and
Hmm.
it can be fun. But yeah, anything that old, you're probably going to be cringing.
You're going to unearth some decaying
Yeah,
worms
for sure.
there, and yeah, they're not going to be
Yep,
pretty.
and we
Yeah.
can take what we can from it, and you know, and if it falls out to where it's never read again, I guess that's what it is. You know,
Yeah, and mhm. And the impact is still going to be.
yeah,
You can't get away from the
for
impact of
sure.
it.
You know,
But
it may not be read much in the future, but it's had its mark. You know, and it influenced a lot.
mhm.
You know, Burroughs influenced Bradbury. You know, and like
Sure.
that. So you
Hmm.
know, you progress, right? That's what you hope to do. I
Hmm.
hope
Yeah,
I haven't written anything too cringy, but we'll see in 10, 20.
about
You know,
100 years we'll find out, won't we?
I suppose there's people out there that
Yeah.
would accuse me of being woke, and okay, I'll wear it as a badge of honor then, you know.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm. So, tell me a little bit more about this collection of short stories you're working on.
well, I have an elf who's been wandering the planet for, say, the last 2,000 years. He's thinks he's paying a penance for crimes against
Hmm.
humanity. He's gone mad quite a few times. He has a familiar that's in the shape of a business card, because that's how he finds people, in the shape of a business card that goes out and finds people for him to help. And so
Uh-huh.
he thinks he's doing it so he can get back to the Fey realm and live there.
Okay.
And it turns out it's not quite that simple. And where this kind of ties into all the stars, for the most part, he's known as Fair Haired Jack.
Oh, okay.
So the Fey realm isn't exactly a traditional Fey realm. Um,
Hmm.
it's kind of a hodgepodge. And as the stories go on, like I said, they're just a series of short stories, and I'm kind of working on the last one now. He begins to realize things aren't what they seem to him, but he's the character
Hmm.
that experiences now. I have unicorns in there that he detests. Um,
Hmm.
there's a one-armed Sasquatch. There's mermaid.
Hmm.
There is shadow people. There's a pulp
Hmm.
homage. Is my homage to Doc Savage is in there. He's
Cool.
in elf form. Uh, I have a Russian vampire. They're called Upirs.
Oh, okay.
Has battle with
Hmm.
that. I
Hmm.
think you could probably call it, what's it called? Cozy fantasy now is kind of the big thing. I mean,
Okay.
he does battle with a vampire, and he tangles. You know, she's got iron teeth, so she can bite
Hmm.
into him. So, but there's also some really low key character studies in some of the stories. I bring in local Native American lore, but I don't try to lump it in with my Fey realm. I'm not trying to
Hmm.
appropriate it, but it's there. I want to
Hmm.
acknowledge it. So I have a story where he meets
Hmm.
Coyote, and and he doesn't really know what to make of him. So
Hmm.
you can kind of think of him as my Tom Bombadil, you know. So
Hmm.
not going to be
Okay.
explained. He's, you know,
Yep.
they're going to be
Yep.
their own
Yep.
thing. But I had to acknowledge the local mythology, you know. So
Hmm.
since I have my European mythology trampling all over the place, but like I said, it's not. It is closer to science fiction ultimately than fantasy. So,
Hmm. Great. So when can we expect to see this in publication?
well, it was supposed to have been last fall, and then I was hoping by
Hmm.
spring, but I think this summer. So, Yeah.
Okay.
I believe it'll be the collected tales of Fair-Haired Jack. So there's two already in my short story collection. I was told there would be jetpacks. There's two of those in there. And there's another one. The vampire one is in a collection called Dark Horses that a local guy has been putting out. But there'll be 14 in all for the
Oh, okay, cool.
collection here. So
And we can look forward to that this summer.
hopefully, I'm not going to say anything with certainty. But this year,
Well, I'm going to hold you to
okay.
that. I'm in absolutely no position to do that, but
Well, I will do my best.
So you're a self-published author, or you're with an
Yes.
independent press? Okay.
Yep.
Sure. Not an easy thing these days, being a self-published author, although it might be easier now than it has been in the past.
Oh, most definitely. When I wrote the October Light of August, I thought, well, let's throw it up on Kindle. We can do a Kindle on this. Well, that was easy. Oh, I can do an actual paperback book? Well, okay. I went and laid that out, and that was, I wouldn't say it was easy. There was a learning curve, but that got me started. And then I'd been out of work for like 2.5 years. I worked in photo labs for like 25 years. And getting hired after you're 50 isn't easy. Once, we know what happened to photo labs for the most part. So I went to work for a print shop, and we bind books there.
Oh, okay.
And that kind of blew my little mind. That's what I do for my day. I actually bind books, all sorts of books, from poetry volumes to anything from left-wing lunacy to right-wing nutbaggery to theological to textbooks to novels. We actually do work with some publishers, I've just been banging out some stuff for Gonzaga University for their students. We're doing a magazine, So I'm actually doing perfect binding, and I still think for being 62 years of age, it's a little hard on the body, standing all day. And it's physical work. But hey, I'm making books, know?
So were you able to physically create and bind copies of your own?
I kind of kept that separated.
Okay.
Except I will, because there's going to be indie bookstore day, or it's not actually, it's more about indie bookstores on April 27th. And we have a local one in town called Auntie's that is probably the biggest independent bookstore in town. And they're hosting indie author day type thing. And I'm going to make special editions of, I was told there would be jetpacks, and I'm going to add an additional Fair-Haired Jack story at the end of it. So,
okay, cool.
And then it's going to be special limited edition just for this event. And so I will be. I think we actually do a better job when we make the books than what you'd get off Amazon, especially like with a matte finish. I've seen if you have a dark cover and you want to go through Amazon, don't go matte, go gloss.
Oh, do they charge up the wazoo for it?
No, it looks milky.
Oh, okay.
It's got a milky look to it. And knowing what we do, it feels like the same laminate we use. So they're either applying it too fast or not hot enough, And I think this will be a matte finish as opposed to glossy that you can order off Amazon. And plus, again, it'll have an extra short story in there to hopefully be enticing for them to buy at Angie's when I'm going to be doing a reading and signing, plus like 19 other authors as well.
So is this the kind of situation where you go up in your car with a whole bunch of copies of the book in the trunk and then sell them at the bookstore, or do you sell them to the bookstore?
We take them into the bookstore ahead of time, and it's kind of a consignment thing, and they take a cut and I take a cut. And we're trying to kind of undersell Amazon a little bit to make it more attractive,
I didn't say that out loud, but good.
I get it, but you have to give them their due. They do make it easier to publish, get something out there. I just never even really considered trying to get an agent and go traditional.
Mhm.
I wrote a stupid little zombie story. I thought, what the heck? I'll throw it up on Amazon and see what
Mhm.
happens.
Mhm.
And I kind of got a taste for it. And I also, don't want to be told I should change something,
Right.
or and maybe that may be a bad thing. Maybe I should, a good another critical eye on a story.
Mhm.
It's necessarily a bad thing, but I'm gonna live or die by my own words, I guess.
So did you have an editor or beta readers?
I tried a beta reader, and for the zombie, October Light of August, and she wanted me to change everything from the
Mm.
title to she thought I needed to punch up the action, and I was just it was such a whoa, whoa, whoa. I put on the brakes, and it
Right.
wasn't a good experience,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
I thought, dude, I just wanted you to look for typos,
Oh, okay.
kind of thing, or if something, there are plot holes or something,
Yeah. Yeah. Not change the
and
book.
yeah, don't change my voice. I'm not wanting to, be anything other than what I am,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
like I said, I'll live or die on that one,
I haven't read the zombie book, but I thought all the stars that ever were. I thought it was highly polished and very presentable. It looked very professional to me.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I did keep going over it,
Mhm.
I'm assuming you read the Kindle version of it, right?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
physical space is turning into an issue right now, and
Oh,
so I
for
do
sure.
everything on
Well,
Kindle. Mhm.
you know, um, I think the paperback version, I have a little more. There's a couple the same illustrations you can kind of see on the cover, but
Mhm.
more of the Medusa or the Portuguese man of war illustration, and
Okay.
the eyes on the cover are actually my wife's eyes that I had sketched out.
Okay. That was my next question. I did want to ask you about the cover, and I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah. Yeah, I originally the cover was good. There was a translation of Beowulf maybe 20 years ago. It was a new translation, and it had like chainmail on the cover, and it looked black and white. And I kind of wanted to do a shot like that with this back of the sister's head with the hair parted and the tattoos on
Mhm.
the back of their neck. And it came close, and then I started seeing all these old star charts from
Mhm.
maybe 15th, 16th century or whatever, and I kind of became enamored with that, and so I sketched out some things, tried to make it look like an old star chart. In fact, I even have a Latin phrase kind of hidden.
I'm looking at the. I'm averting my eyes over to the cover to examine it right now, and that's why I'm moving around so
Um,
much.
yeah, but there's you can see a Portuguese man of war, of course, and there's
Mhm.
a old tattooing machine, and there's things like that. But
Mhm.
kind of like how they would have illustrated constellations, like you'd see Capricorn or something, and that was
Mhm.
kind of the idea for that one.
Okay. I may
And
have been imposing Bernard's belt in there, but I'm not quite sure. Or Bernard's curve. Yeah.
but yeah, so it was fun, and I ended up liking it better. Actually, it's kind of a negative of what I originally designed. It was actually in
Okay.
sepia tones and looked more like an ancient parchment type.
Mhm.
And I got outvoted. I had put it to vote. Said, "Do you like the blue version or the positive version?" And the blue version won hands down. So
Okay.
okay, so I went with the blue one.
Who was the voting contingent on this?
Family members.
Okay.
It's on Facebook. So, but I do have version of it. The original one, and who knows? Maybe I'll
Mhm.
put out a special edition with a short story thrown in there or something to with the original cover.
Yeah. So you did the cover art yourself.
I did. Yep.
Okay. Cool.
I'm not that good of an inker. I'm more of a pencil guy,
Mhm.
but I thought it was good enough for what I needed. You
Mhm.
know, and I did the photography for the October Light of August,
Mhm.
um, and then for my I was told there would be jetpacks. I did all that, and of
Mhm.
course, photoshopped it. And even the Milky Way images that are on the used in the background, I shot
Mhm.
south of here, a place called Fish Trap. So
Okay.
we're away from the city lights, and it was the first time I ever saw the Milky Way, and it was astonishing. So,
Oh, cool.
yeah.
Great. Okay, Bob, it's been a pleasure talking with you. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Good. I did as well. Yeah.
One more thing I have to know before we go.
Okay.
What is an AU?
Astronomical unit.
Okay.
It is the distance, what is it? Circumference of the Earth going around the sun, I believe. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm reaching back to my astronomy class days. So,
Okay.
yeah, that's what an AU is. So.
Okay. Because I think it was Carol who was constantly asking that.
Yes.
I'm like, it's not Australia.
No.
I thought about Googling it, and I think, I'm just gonna ask Bob. It'd be more fun.
I believe it's the orbit of the Earth.
Okay.
Around the sun is an astronomical unit, something.
Okay. All right. So wonderful. And again, it's been very fun having you, and I wish you all the best as an author and a wonderful future as a writer.
Well, thank you very much. I really enjoyed this.
Okay, great. And we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good.